Today, we'll travel to Chitrakoot, where we'll finish this Ayodhya Yatra. The place that we've been staying here and the previous place were very nice. Chitrakoot is very simple. So don't expect the same, because we're going to the forest. I want to spend some time at the beginning addressing another touchy point, or delicate point, a point that sometimes confuses devotees. And here it's now being spoken by Sumantra, who's seemingly confused also. The speech that he makes comes at a time when it's now time for Sumantra to go back to Ayodhya. Ram says, "Thank you, go back to Ayodhya." And as happens from time to time in the Ramayana, his heart overwhelms his sense of duty. And in our lives, we discussed this earlier and we're going back and revisiting it again. In the life of devotion, we have to sometimes act according to rule and regulation and duty and execution of duty and all of that. And at times there are things that rule the heart, and some people say, "I just follow my heart." We've met people like that. I feel like chanting, and so I chant. And when I don't feel like chanting, I don't chant, because why should I chant when I don't feel like chanting? I'm a from the heart person. I only want to chant anyway. And all kinds of other things in life. I'll give some examples, but first let me touch on what Sumantra says to Ram. Because Ram has said, from this point forward, we're going by foot. You've been the chariot driver, but we're now at the border of the Koshala kingdom. We're entering into the darkness of the forest where there's no paths. There's no, other than rishis living in their ashram, there's no habitation other than wild beasts and birds and mosquitoes. Sumantra says, "What man in this world has ever had to face such a perverse destiny, O Raghava?" And then comes the question, what is the value of cultivating piety and truth when we see such a result? And then some other things. Your departure from Ayodhya is the ruination of all of us. We've come under the control of Kaikeyi. We will simply suffer. So that the operative question is, why live a life of truth and piety when you have this kind of an outcome? destiny. Why do bad things happen to good people, and why do good things happen to bad people? Why live a life of duty and righteousness and virtue when bad things happen? So on the duty side, we know from Bhagavad Gita and other sources as well, perform your prescribed duty. And it's not, with the consideration of what's the outcome. When there's consideration of the outcome, that's the mode of passion. I do because I'll get something I want. And if I don't get what I want, I won't do. So the outcome, the fruit of the performance of duty, that's what I want. So it's a convenience or a means to get what I want. That's the mode of passion. So Ram is, through his Leela, is demonstrating the position of one who doesn't perform duty to get fruit. They perform duty because you perform duty. Happiness. So Ram's response, in principle, is, I'm very happy. I'm happy because I'm able to carry out my duty. And the cause of this situation, the current sequence of events, and the events themselves, and where the events lead to, I'm in the forest instead of in the palace. I was going to become king in the morning, and the next I'm sent in exile like a criminal to the forest. It's the same to me. It's like when Kaikeyi said, go to the forest for 14 years. Is that all, Mother? Not attached to the result, not seeing the purpose of piety is get what you want, but seeing the purpose of piety or righteousness or virtue is the happiness of doing so. The condition of purity that comes from doing so, and the happiness in that condition of purity that comes, that's a mode of goodness, happiness. But for us as devotees, because that's what we do as devotees. We carry out our duties. We carry out instructions of what our duties are and how to carry out our duties. And therefore, we'll find in Ramayana, and immediately following this, we'll hear it a little bit later, he just gives instruction to Sumantra what is his duty. Now, Sumantra is as old as his father. We've heard Ram is 27 years old, and he's giving instruction to someone who is 60,000 years old. That's, that could be impertinent. But he's respecting his elder, but his elder is, now here comes the rasa side. The rasa is, Sumantra sees Ram as his worshipable master. And Ram is accepting according to how he's being regarded by Sumantra in that way. And Sumantra speaks and says, this may seem, please understand, I'm going to speak in such a way that may seem impertinent. Like, I'm going to speak something other than what I know you want. You're the master, I'm the servant, it may seem impertinent. But please accept this as my devotion for you. It's the heart. So now, very practical, in our lives as devotees, there's these two things, the head and the heart. And we don't disconnect the two, we'll have a problem. We have to consider the head part, the rules part, the standards part, and then feelings. So now I'll give a couple of examples. One example we heard yesterday. Sumitra was approached by her son, Lakshmana, And she spoke from her head and said, "You're right on. And my duty as your mother to support you being in Ram's service." How fortunate it is, even unsought, that opportunities to serve superiors come, and that's who you are. You're a servant of your superiors. Bless you, my son. Go forward and be the servant of your superiors. Accept Ram as your Dasaratha, accept Sita as me, and accept the forest as Ayodhya. And then she cried. That's the heart side. She's going to feel separation from her son. And Ramayana is teaching us the importance of following duty. It doesn't mean the heart stops, but duty takes precedence. Now, mantra is another story. And then mantra influencing Kaikeyi in the way that Kaikeyi became influenced. And Kaikeyi broke down when her son said, "I place duty above everything. I will go to the forest and I will live for 14 years and Ram will come back and rule the kingdom." And she cried. And up to that point, she's stoic. She doesn't flinch when everybody's blasting her, hurling insults. She's righteous and, indignant to and impervious to anything. Another is the Urmila. She places her duty above her own duty, his duty above her own duty. No, doesn't mean she's not going to feel anything, but she's going to be content in her role as being a servant. We're going to hear again today, this morning, about Kaushalya, another example, the head and the heart. And when Sumantra comes back and is questioned in the presence of Dasaratha and the two queens, tell the story, what happened, what did Ram say, what was his parting words before you left? That is what's going to be my sustenance for the next 14 years. So there was a message for Ram, a message for Kaushalya, and then what Lakshmana said, which was really feisty, and then what Sita said. And hearing this, they all break down. Because now it's not just, the reality is set in. So then Kaushalya speaks from her heart, and her heart's broken. And she blasts Dasaratha. Dasaratha, cringing. And then she goes back to duty and says, now on top of it all, I've lost my son, now I've offended my husband, speaking harshly, and you should punish me, and what a terrible person I am, in terms of duty. But then, so there's the head and the heart. And, sometimes devotees say, how do I balance my spiritual activity and my worldly duties? This is a question, how do I balance the feelings that I'm feeling and the duty that lies before me? So Ram is teaching duty comes first. He has very clear what the feelings of everybody are. They've said them again and again and again and again. It's going to happen again and again. Today, this morning. And he's unyielding because he's very clear. I'll return after 14 years. He makes his pledge to Ayodhya. We'll hear it. But he's going to place duty above his feelings and others' feelings. He's not unaware of their feelings. He's, from his position of executing duty, being highly sensitive to their feelings again and again and again and again and again. But he's teaching a lesson. Now, he's letting Sumantra know, I'm happy. For me, the forest and Ayodhya are the same. It comes up later when he gets to Chitrakoot. The forest and the Ayodhya are the same. In fact, I like it here better. I don't have any disturbances. That's on, I like side thing. But duty. But the happiness that's the happiness for an exalted person. And that will help us stabilize when we meet situations that pull at the heart. We're not insensitive to those feelings, but we don't let those feelings rule us, govern us. That's what Mantra did to Kaikeyi, and that's what Kaikeyi did, and what a mess. And then there's subtleties of what Sita did as opposed to what Urmila did. They're sisters. Anyway, there's subtleties, and then how to apply those in our lives. We need somebody to guide us in decision making and how to live our life in this proper consideration of who we are from the head side and who we are from our role and duties in life side. But it's not that just finish this off. It's not that we should value, have we made the right decision because now the outcome isn't nice. You judge plena pariyachiyate, you judge a thing by its result, but the result is the duty to something like what Bhishma Dev said to Yudhishthira, chapter 9 Bhagavatam, or in Mahabharata. You did the right thing. Don't lament. You did the right thing because it's according to scripture, it's what the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and it's what Krishna wanted, and you did it for him. So the outcome you don't like, but it's what Krishna wanted. And don't try to figure out what Krishna wants and the intention of how things play out the way they play out. Look at those internal considerations. So, it's not easy. The promise isn't making these refined discriminations is easy, but it's part of what we're to do, and part of the benefit of hearing these wonderful pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Ram. So we ended yesterday evening with Ram instructing Sumantra to cross the Tamasa river, and now they get back on the chariot and they're heading further away from Ayodhya. Sumantra is still with them, plus the party of 3, so it's a party of 4. In Valmiki Ramayana it mentions there's 3 other rivers that they cross, the Veda Shruti, Gomati, and Shandika. And finally they come to the southern border of the Koshala kingdom. Ram gets down from the chariot, turns towards Ayodhya, offers a prayer, and in one sense it's also a pledge. My dear Ayodhya, you know, the Dham and the person are not different. So, my dear Ayodhya, when I have fulfilled my pledge to my father in 14 years, I will return. It's just a declaration, but he fulfills it. And as they continue, reaching the bank of the Ganges, they come to a place where we're going today, Shingha Vera Pura. Shingha means deer, just like we heard a whole lot about Rishi Shringa. He's a rishi who looked like a deer, or at least had antlers of a deer. We heard why that was so. So Shringha means deer, and the Shingha Vera was the capital of the Nishada race. Nishada means tribal people, not just city people, urban people, but forest people, tribal people. And Guha, so Guha is the king. The name Shingha Vera was given because they had this very interesting practice of deception. They would make a deer, or take a deer skin or whatever, and make it stuffed that looked like a deer with antlers and the whole thing, just standing there. And other deer in the forest would come sniffing and, you know, cuddle up to this deer and make friends. And that would be the sign that the Nishadas would then take a trap, snare the deer, and capture the deer. That's how the place got its name. And there's a whole lot of people in the forest that lived this way. And Guha was their king. Guha was very powerful, very skilled in military, an excellent leader, and a dear devotee of Lord Ram. And in his devotion to Ram, he had a relationship of friendship. Now, little comment about relationship of friendship. Ayodhya is still within the precincts or territory of Vaikuntha, the upper limits, just like in Vaikuntha, Lord Narayana doesn't have a mother and doesn't have a father and doesn't have brothers. Although the brothers of Ram, they have this mood of servitude, the servant and the servant of the servant. They're brothers, but they have the servitude mood, and he's, you know, in this superior master, they're the servant position. Guha, unlike Vaikuntha, has a mood of friendship. And when they greet one another, they embrace. He does not like pay obeisances and that kind of thing. So there's different... rasas become more intimate in Ayodhya compared to Vaikuntha. Relationships take on a whole other, not just majesty, Aishwarya, but intimacy. So Ram, when they reach Shinghaverapura, near the bank of the Ganges, Ram and Lakshman and Sita, they see Guha from a distance. And Guha's there with his ministers and heads of state. Although they're living in the forest, he's got this whole structure underneath him. And immediately Ram and Lakshman walk towards him. He takes the first step. Guha sees them approaching. He's shocked to see Ram dressed in bark garments. And visually he shows his surprise and unhappiness, but nonetheless he comes forward and quickly embraces Ram, very warmly, because he's very strong, embraces Ram, and says to Ram, right away, this kingdom is your kingdom. Please rule the kingdom. Stay here with us. I understand, because he has a spy network. He understands that Ram has been sent to the forest for 14 years. Make this your place and rule this place. You're no longer in Ayodhya, you're here with us. You stay here with us. And I have very nice supplies of nice foodstuffs and comfortable place to lie down for the night, and because it's the evening hour. Ram says, because you've made this offering, I'll accept, but I'll also give it back to you. That was cool. And the part that I can accept is for my horses. You can offer to the horses, this, the chariot, and feed them according to what their needs are, and otherwise, I'll simply take water. Lakshman gets the water, and they make an arrangement, Sumantra and Lakshman, for him to lie down and spend the night. Guha, although he's a friend in this rasa of friendship, he looks obviously to Ram as the superior. Friendships can be like that. And with Lakshmana, they stay awake all night guarding Sita and Ram, Lakshman and Guha. And they're having conversation, and Lakshman is feeling very pained, in the mood of servitude. He looks upon Sita and Ram. As long as Ram is lying on the ground with Sita, how can I sleep, or eat, or enjoy myself? Behold him sleeping on a bed of straw with Sita. And again, this term comes, tormented with sorrow. If you remember from yesterday morning, it keeps coming and keeps coming and keeps coming, and it gets bigger, and then it keeps coming. It pervades the Leela of Ram, just inescapable. As Lakshman is speaking in these ways, Guha, powerful Nishada king, also starts to cry. Great sorrow. Now that they've reached the Ganga, Ram requests Sumantra. From this point forward, we're going to walk. You can now go back to Ayodhya. And then Sumantra very respectfully objects. Not his position to object, but he objects, as already discussed. Please don't consider this insubordinate or out of place. Consider it an expression of my devotion to you. Ram gave the response that I shared, and then he one of his qualities that we heard in many times the list of his qualities, he's very expert in administration, the art of statecraft, sometimes translated. So he's contemplating back in Ayodhya, the ministers may get into this get-back mentality towards Kaikeyi. And he wants Sumantra, the chief of the ministers, to not let that happen because it's going to bring pain to Dasaratha. He has to, settle a squabble and quarrel, and he's already pained enough. So he gives instructions on duty for Sumantra, how to make sure that doesn't happen, make sure the ministers give proper regard to Kaikeyi. Although Kaikeyi has, done this atrocity, and he knows it, he's not smashing Kaikeyi. Get her, she deserves it. He's upholding his duty to Kaikeyi without any consideration of the wrong that has been done to him by Kaikeyi. He could easily, he's powerful. He could, smash her, dump her in the garbage can and get rid of her. That's not what he does. He wants Dasaratha to be able to rule peacefully. So, in response, Sumantra, it bounces kind of, and he just pleads with Ram to let him go to the forest. He says, I don't want to return to Ayodhya. What's it going to be like? Now this is sorrow magnifying 100-fold. When you left and I'm driving the chariot, the whole city of Ayodhya was in such grief. If I now return with an empty chariot, then the reality will set in and it'll increase 100-fold. The wailing and crying and grief that everyone's going to feel and express, it'll be overwhelming. I don't want to go back to Ayodhya. Please let me stay with you. Then Ram says, I understand your love for me. I understand your attachment for me. That's the heart side. Now the duty side. Kaikeyi, when you return on an empty chariot, she'll then be reassured. It's done. Ram's gone to the forest. He stayed in the forest. Because nothing else is going to pacify the heart and mind of Kaikeyi except this one thing. I go to the forest. And when Kaikeyi is peaceful, that's the objective. Because otherwise it's going to be too much turmoil in Ayodhya. That's his reason. He wants Sumantra to return. Then this conversation with Guha, please stay with me, says, no, it wouldn't be appropriate. You have all this, nice things and comforts and so forth, but the purpose of my going to the forest is to live as an ascetic. So, thank you, but no thank you. I have to carry on. So he asks Guha to make an arrangement for him to cross the Ganges, so he can go visit the hermitage of Bharadwaj and find out from Bharadwaj where would be a good place for him to stay as an ascetic in the forest. The Guha makes an arrangement. He's king, so his fantastic boat is prepared. And the boat comes, and Ram instructs Lakshman, seat first, seat Sita comfortably, and then you can get on the boat and put all the clothing and our shovel and our weapons and things on the boat, and then I'll come last. As Ram is about to step on the boat, there's a shriek that says, "Stop!" And everyone looks around, where'd that come from? And it was the boatman. Guha's boatman. And Ram said, why did you cry out like that to stop? The boatman said, if you step in this boat, I'll be ruined. And Ram says, well, what do you recommend? Because I have to get to the other side of the Ganges. And the boatman says, the only way that you can get in the boat is if I can wash your feet. Because I've heard about your feet. I've heard that the dust from your feet is so powerful that you just step on stones and a woman comes out. And if you step on this boat, then I'll have another wife. And I'm a poor man. I can't maintain another wife. And what's my wife going to say? There's only one way. I have to wash your feet. Ram smiles and he nods, and Sita's looking at the whole situation like, what's going on? So he's had a whole plan. He brings out this platter or bowl and washes his feet with Ganges water many times, delightfully, many times. He gathers all the water, drinks the water, sprinkles it on the head of his family, sprinkles it on his head of all the tribal people. And they have a big festival. He looks at Sita, who was looking at him like, what's with this guy? And he gives her some facial expression, kind of sarcastic, like, just see, you didn't want this to happen. So Ram, and quickly everyone understood it was a trick. And then Ram says, so may I get in the boat now? Seeking permission from the boatman to get on his boat. Guha was very disturbed, but when he understood why the boatman was doing what the boatman was doing, he was also laughing with everyone. He gets on the boat. They're crossing the Ganges. Sita does this kind of thing again and again. She takes some water of the Ganges, sprinkles it on her head, and offers prayers to the Ganges. If somehow we can return back to Ayodhya in 14 years, I give you my vow that I'll visit the sacred places on the shore of the Ganges upon our return to Ayodhya, which she then fulfilled. So the boatman got to the other side where the water was shallow, and he tried to maneuver the boat in such a way that the party could get off the boat. Guha was on the boat also. And they got off the boat, and the boatman is with a big smile, with folded palms, smiling at Ram. And Sita noticed that the expression of her husband was he was feeling some discomfort. And she knew why. Because it was part of Ram's culture that when receiving something, some service, he would reciprocate in some way with that, whoever that somebody was, however insignificant. But now he's a pauper and he's living in the forest. But she had some ornaments. That was part of the agreement with Dasaratha. So she took off one of her rings, didn't say anything, just handed it to Ram. And Ram was then offering it to the boatman. The boatman was saying, just having the opportunity to render service to you, that's my full happiness. The position of service is the position of full happiness. I don't need a reward. Ram was insisting. The boatman persisted again and again and again. I'm satisfied just having the opportunity to render some service to you. And he refused. Guha, having picked up on the mood of service, and joyful service at that, to Ram, he said, I have provided this boat for you to cross the Ganges. Now I would like, in turn, that when the time of my death comes, you help me cross the ocean of birth and death to attain your lotus feet and serve you eternally. Ram didn't say anything, but his smile spoke millions of words. Now, in Acharya's commentary, they say that the boatman in his previous life was a tortoise in the ocean of milk, where Lord Vishnu was reclining on an antarshesh, and the foot of Lord Vishnu was approachable by the tortoise. The tortoise wanted to come and lick the lotus toe of Lord Vishnu. Lakshmi saw the tortoise and chewed the tortoise away. So because she's the goddess of fortune, he went back into the ocean, but he got his chance as a boatman. And that is connected to why Sita was feeling uncomfortable. The goddess of fortune. Now they're on the other side of the Ganges. There's no paths, there's no habitation, it's just wilderness. So now Ram makes the game plan. Ram says to Lakshman, we have to protect one another. The forest is very dangerous. There's no paths, there's dangerous animals, there's rakshasas, there's deep pits, there's so many things. We have to stay together. You go first, protecting Sita. I'll follow Sita. We'll all be in this position of being on guard for any danger. Sita's not accustomed to the rigors of forest life. There's no signs of any paths or passage of human beings. Let us be very careful. Let us be wary. That's the game plan. Meanwhile, Sumantra's on the other side of the Ganges, seeing them slowly disappear. And again, this word sorrow and grief, he breaks down crying. After going a little distance, the heart side of Ram is thinking about the welfare of his father and his mothers, or the queens. And the feeling he's feeling is, while I've placed duty above everything, they may die. Now, that was already said multiple times, but now he's feeling that heart feeling. So he turns to Lakshmana and says, I'd like you to go back and protect my father and protect our mothers. It's an instruction of service. Lakshmana says, no way. He said, you have all faith in Bharata. Bharata can protect them. And if you send me away, I won't be able to maintain my life. We discussed this, the difference between Bharata's mood. Lakshmana has to be physically present with Ram. He can't live without it. And he's there for a purpose of service, to protect Sita and provide the needs of Ram and carry Sita's clothing and everything. He's there He can't do that back in Ayodhya. Rama understands there's no way that Lakshman can live without being with him. So he drops the idea. He yields to his devotee, Lakshman. It's part of, that's the heart side. They travel some distance into the interior of the forest. They take rest. In the morning, they start their path in an easterly direction, heading towards the confluence of the Ganga and the Jamuna. And then they start to see signs of habitation. They see trees that have been cut with some instrument. They see some man-made paths in the forest. They see in the distance some smoke rising through the trees. So they know there's habitation over here. Outside, this is the heading to the ashram of Bharadwaj, they see one of his students, a young ascetic. And the young ascetic welcomes them. And he takes them to the very place where Bharadwaj Muni is seated performing his rituals, his yagyas. It's Treta Yuga. And Bharadwaj Muni is described in Valmiki Ramayana as practically speaking omniscient. Practically speaking omniscient means that he has some very strong connection with Paramatma. And Paramatma helps him understand things that the rest of us don't understand because that Paramatma connection. Bharadwaj Muni is one of the Sapta Rishis, as is Vishwamitra Muni and Janmadagni and others. So he's a very elevated personality. And as we heard in the very first day, he was a disciple of Valmiki. He was with Valmiki when the Krancha bird was struck by the hunter and so forth. Bharadwaj receives very gracefully and happily, he receives Sita and Ram and Lakshman. Ram identifies each of them by name and what their position is. And Bharadwaj's reply was, I was expecting you. I was very eagerly awaiting your arrival. And it seems that Bharadwaj understood he was Lord Vishnu because he says that having sight of you is very rare. And now I consider my life, my ashram, and everything to be complete and perfect. Please stay with us for the 14 years, because I already knew. 14 years of exile, please stay here. Consider this your ashram. It's very suited. Ram says, it wouldn't be appropriate. I have taken this vow to obey the command of my father, living a life of asceticism. So I can't stay here, but perhaps you can indicate a place in the forest that would be suitable for us to spend some years together. So Bharadwaj then describes Chitrakoot, which we'll be visiting today, this evening. And he describes Chitrakoot in very grand and glorious ways. It's a place where, very beautiful place, bountiful place, all necessities are there from nature. Many ascetics also reside there. It has different contours, there's different peaks and different plateaus, and very nice. I think it's sufficiently isolated and comfortable place for you to stay. Then he gave them directions how to get there. So they spent the night with Bharadraj, and off they went the next morning, heading towards the confluence of the Ganges and Jamuna, because they had crossed the Ganges and now they're going to another river crossing. And the river crossing, there wasn't a guha and a boat, so they made a raft. Well, Lakshmana, skilled as he was, made a raft of logs and made a nice sitting place for Sita, and they put her clothing and the weapons and the basket and the shovel next to Sita. And the two, Ram and Lakshman, were rowing this raft to cross the confluence of the two rivers. Once again, Sita offers her prayers to the river Jamuna, praying for a safe passage and a return after their exile. They get to the other side of that confluence of the river in Jamuna. They place the raft by the side of the river. They see this gigantic banyan tree filled with foliage. Sita circumambulates the banyan tree and offers prayers to the banyan tree for the protection of her husband and their safe journey through the forest. She's the goddess of fortune, so she's playing that function. Then comes this very delightful description where Sita is seeing trees and flowers from the trees and other flowering plants that she's never seen before. She asks Ram all about them. She's loving it, hearing the sounds of the birds, and there's some beautiful paintings that are depicting this scene. She's so happy. She's so happy. She's not unhappy. She's not missing Ayodhya at all. She's so happy. There she is with Ram, protected by Lakshman in the forest, and she reminds Ram once again, remember, we had this, you promised me, and we could go to the forest one day. How lovely. I'm so happy. You know, the sorrow was overwhelmed with the pleasantness of forest life. They continued for some distance. They found a place to rest for the night. At sunrise the next morning, they continued their journey, and as instructed by Bharadraj, they saw in the distance Chitrakoot mountain. Then another delightful description. The mountain itself was bluish in color, populated by different trees of different colors, some green, some yellow, some red. Some of the peaks of the Chitrakoot mountain were very high, some were very smooth, some had plateaus, and as they were approaching, they were told by Bharadraj that Valmiki's ashram is there. Go see him first. So on one plateau, they have a sense that's where Valmiki is. Then there's long descriptions, pages of the serenity, the bounty, the attractiveness of Chitrakoot, and they're now reached the conclusion. Bharadraj gave us good advice. This is a place where we can stay and be very happy, residing in Chitrakoot. They came to Valmiki's ashram. And the nature of greeting is different in different circumstances. And in this case, they greeted him with joined palms. Immediately Valmiki invited them to join him. Please be seated. And they have some discussion about where would be a suitable place. Valmiki suggests a suitable place, not so far from his ashram. Now, we visited Valmiki's ashram and we had this discussion. He had multiple ashrams. And then, each place says, this is the best one, this is the real one, this is where he composed Ramayana, this is where Sita stayed, this is where love... They all say the same thing. And there's like 30 of them all over India. But Valmiki Ramayana specifically speaks of Chitrakoot being at least one of those ashrams. And the place that they choose is near, not exactly on the same plateau or something, but some distance. And then Lakshmana is set to work on creating a hut because he has these skills. And he's the servant, and he wants to do some service, so he gets that service to do. And they become situated. And now, the rest, there's no further mention of Chitrakoot and Ram, Lakshmana, and Sita for the rest of this morning. Because what we hear now is Sumantra returning back to Ayodhya and the scene in Ayodhya. Sumantra's heart is very heavy. As he enters Ayodhya, he finds it absent the joy that he has known for so long, because Dasaratha really developed Ayodhya. It was fantastic. Everything and everything and everything within Ayodhya. Now there's people still there, but the joy is gone, the festivities are gone. The place is filled with shoka, sadness. And seeing Sumantra returning with an empty chariot, it spiked that sorrow. Now it's not just a notion, it's done. He goes straight away to find Dasaratha. Dasaratha is in the chambers of Kaushalya with Sumitra. And he comes before the king, his beloved, long-standing master, and the king, Sumantra covers his head with his cloth. He doesn't want to be seen. He's feeling so bad. When he comes before the king requests, naturally, Sumantra, tell what your experience was. So he narrates the whole experience. Hearing that it's done, Ram has gone to the forest, he's now come back without Ram. Dasaratha falls to the ground, unconscious. Kaushalya and Sumitra try to lift him. They try to console him, saying, please don't submit to this grief. You're our leader, you're our king, you're our husband, and we're depending upon you to be strong. Please rise. That's their service as queen. That's the duty part. Then comes the heart part. Kaushalya speaks about her son, who I haven't been able to live my life without seeing him for even a day, and now he's gone for 14 years. And she falls to the ground unconscious. Sorrow increasing with more sorrow and more sorrow. The ladies who are attending, they come and sprinkle water on Kaushalya, try to revive her, try to console her. the king also. Dasaratha awakens from his unconscious state and he turns to Sumantra, and says to Sumantra, what were his parting words? And this is what I'll hang my life on, his words, for the next 14 years. And Sumantra said he gave specific instruction for me to convey the following to you, Dasaratha. He asked me to touch your feet and Kaushalya's feet on his behalf. He requested me to convey his fond farewell to the ladies in the court who are to Ram just like his mother. So Sumantra bowed at the feet of everybody. And then he continued to speak. In transparent manner, he's just giving a replay of, what was said. Ram, who was constantly shedding tears as he spoke, asked that Bharata be quickly installed as the Prince Regent. He left instructions that Bharata should offer all respect to his aged father and to all his mothers, especially the grief-stricken Kaushalya. That was his words. Then he repeated what Lakshman said. Whoa. Angry, enraged, Lakshman said, parting words. For what offense has this virtuous prince been exiled? The king has carried out Kaikeyi's order without considering its merit. Regardless of his reasoning, I find no justification whatsoever for the emperor's decision to send away the sinless Ram. Having performed an act which has caused nothing but pain to all the people, how can father remain as the king any longer? Indeed, I cannot see in him the qualities of a father. For me, Ram alone is my brother, my master, and father. That's Lakshman's parting words before Sumantra came back. And then he reports, because he's asked, what was Sita's mood and what were her words? Sumantra says, the blessed Princess Sita stood silent as I prepared to leave. It was as if her mind was possessed by some evil spirit. She was motionless, distracted, heaving deep sighs, gazing upon her husband's face. She burst into tears, covering her face with her bejeweled hands. Then the three of them stood watching as I drove my chariot away. How is Dasaratha going to feel? How is Kaushalya going to feel? Because they love Sita as they love their sons. Dasaratha expresses extreme regret in the following way. My attachment to virtue was foolish because it's brought about such an unvirtuous result. Where is the truth in banishing the truthful prince? He laments, how could I act in such a contradictory way? I didn't consult my ministers. I just acted according to what I thought was righteous. Surely this calamity is going to destroy our entire dynasty. And the king felt helpless. The king felt helpless. He turns to Sumantra and says, take me to the forest. Find somebody that can bring Ram back. Just, wound my broken heart. I won't be able to live. Dasaratha had the hope that somehow Sumantra would bring back a different message, but he didn't. Dasaratha just continued sobbing and crying and berating himself. Kaushalya, hearing all of this, she's rolling on the ground, tossing this way, that way, as if possessed by some evil spirit. Sumantra tries to make it nice. Said, actually, I think they'll settle very nicely in the forest. He gives a different report what Sita said. Sita is especially happy. She likes the sights and the sounds in the forest. She sees Ram and Lakshmana at her side. She thinks she's in a pleasure garden only a few miles away from Ayodhya. Tries to paint a different picture. Now comes Kaushalya's heart, and then comes Kaushalya's sense of duty. She erupts. She blasts Dasaratha, her husband, the king. My lord, you are famous in all the three worlds for your compassion and kindness, yet you thoughtlessly banished your faultless son. You have divested Ram of his right to be king. Even if Ram returns after 14 years, will Bharat relinquish the throne and treasury and turn everything over to Ram? Ram, like any noble person, will never accept the kingdom left by his younger brother, even as a tiger would not eat food brought to him by another animal. My husband, I believe that you can no longer tell right from wrong. The main support for a woman or a husband, and next is her son. And like Ram, you've ruined Ram, and I'm also ruined. My husband, having lost all good sense, and my son gone away, the whole kingdom has been ruined by you. Now, on top of what he's already feeling. He whimpers, be kind to me. And she realizes what she's done and what she said, and she falls at his feet and appeals to him. Now it's the duty side. I've spoken in such a way that a wife should never speak to her husband. You should punish me. You should banish me. What a wicked person. On top of all this other, I now have this other thing on my head. I've offended such an exalted personality. A person who I know to be always truthful. So now her grief and despair is magnified by her offending her husband. Please forgive me. Overcome by grief, I uttered improper words. Grief destroys patience. Grief takes away knowledge. Grief confounds the senses. There is no enemy like grief, this sorrow thing. People act and speak in a way that's, you have to excuse it because the heart is overwhelming their better nature sometimes. So now 6 nights have passed since Ram has left. Kaushalya soon he's going to leave this world. We're almost done. Kaushalya is by his side. At this time, something that we heard earlier, Dasaratha recalls this episode with Shravan Kumar, the young brahmachari, the young brahmana, who was taking care of his aged parents who were blind, and he shot him with an arrow by mistake, by firing a weapon by the power of sound. Hearing the sound, he thought it was an elephant drinking water, etc. And then he recounts the whole story in detail, and then recalls the words of the ascetic father, who said, "As I'm experiencing this sorrow caused by the death of my son, so also will you in the future mourn for your son. Because of this bad deed that I did long ago, now it's come to bear on me. And soon, I understand, I am also going to leave this world in grief for the loss of my son." The 6th night, he's tormented by the whole circumstance. After some time, he becomes silent, his mind fully concentrated on one thing, Ram. And in the middle of the night, he gives up his body and goes to the spiritual world. In the morning, he's found dead. Immediately Vashishta is called. Vashishta makes an arrangement for the body of the king to be placed, preserved in oil. He makes arrangements for Bharata to be called, to come back, perform the funeral for his father, and to anoint him as the king. The messengers are sent with a very explicit message. Don't say anything about Ram or your father, or Ram's father. Just simply say, go to Bharata and Shatrughna and say, the family priest and all the ministers inform you all is well. Please come here quickly. There's some important matter for you to take care of. So the messengers are sent. They have the best of horses. They can travel hundreds of miles to Kaikeya's kingdom. Giri Vraja is it's called. And now there's different accounts. One of the accounts says that the kingdom was in today's Afghanistan, or near the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan. There's another Wikipedia source that says it was in present-day Russia, but seems too far away. And in 3 days' time, because in 3 days' time they got there, just around the time of the dawn of the third day, the fourth day, and they're brought to the presence of Bharat and Shatrughna in the early morning hour. So we'll continue tomorrow morning, and we'll finish up all of this. Bharat's journey back to Ayodhya, Bharat's journey to Chitrakoot, his exchanges with everybody while he's in Ayodhya, the infamy that's hanging on his head, how he addresses himself to everybody, and again, the different relationships, and the feelings, and how carefully and expertly and competently Bharat addresses the whole situation. Shri Ramachandra ki jai.